I hope everyone's doing well this morning. Unfortunately, Friday we had a bit of a technical issue. Zoom was having problems, it seems, around the world with letting various hosts of meetings in. But anyway, it seems this morning this problem has been solved. So let's jump straight in and let us talk about harmonizing your data. Now, this topic, the prerequisite is that you've already attended the beginner's course, because the things I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to go through relatively quickly. But I'm also going to, talk about one or two new things. A lot of this is going to be revision, of course, for most of you, but some of it will be new. So to make your data the same format is very important in ACL, because we often want to do things like look for duplicates or summarize on a certain field. But if document numbers don't look identical to ACL, then you will not get the correct result. So for example, an invoice number 123 does not look the same to ACL as invoice number 1-23. An address with the word street in it does not look the same as an address with the word st dot for street in it. Now, to harmonize our data, there are quite a few functions and commands and tools we can use. These are some of them I'm going to list here, and we will look at some of them in this session. The lower function is a very simple tool, a very simple function rather, that we use a lot. It makes all your letters lowercase. That's very important because capital A is not the same to ACL as small a. So if you have, for example, a city called Aberdeen with a capital A and another city in the same field, Aberdeen with a small a, and you want to know how many times the city name Aberdeen appears, you're going to get the wrong answer because ACL is going to see two different cities called Aberdeen. It's not going to realize that that city is there twice. It's going to think that it's there only once, depending on whether you write capital A or small a for Aberdeen. We're going to also look again at the exclude function, which, remember, removes certain symbols from a field, from a given field, from a character field, right? The include function also removes symbols, but we know it is slightly different from exclude. It almost accidentally removes symbols, because what it does is it keeps the symbols that are valid. It throws away the symbols that are invalid. The omit function is similar to exclude, you might recall, but the omit function, what it does is it omits exact combinations. So if I were to omit the letters TH, for example, in the name Catherine, the result would not have TH in it. Now, if I excluded TH, it will also go from Catherine. I'm just trying to think of a better example. I think I'm going to show you one in my actual data. Otherwise, I'm going to waste too much time right now rambling. Okay, so we'll come back to omit in the data. Let's look at the insert. Let's talk about the insert function quickly. That's where you insert certain symbols. It's not just to make the data look pretty. It is often to make the data look exactly the same. Typically, when you have general ledger accounts in one accounting system and in another one, where they're identical except for the fact that one has a few extra zeros here, or similarly with bank account numbers, we can sometimes use the insert function. Replace, we know, just replaces some old text with some new text. That's very important sometimes. We'll do one or two examples. Regex replace. Now, most of you have probably never heard of regex replace. This is a replace function, but it uses something called regular expressions. I will show you one example with this. Regular expressions are like a language that was invented long ago, before ACL was created, outside of ACL. It's got its own rules, its own syntax. It looks very different from what we are used to seeing in ACL. Okay, the map function we use just to check if something has a certain format. And of course, normally we would say not map, show me things with the wrong format. The idea of this is it would give me a clue as to what funny things there might be in my data if I see things with the wrong format. Did someone put brackets or slashes or hyphens into a document number, for example, that I wasn't aware of? The map function would help me to see which things don't have the right format. So map doesn't itself fix anything. All it does is it alerts me to the fact that there's something funny in my data sometimes. All right, and the join command also helps me a bit to harmonize my data, not directly, but it also alerts me to some extent or somehow that there's an issue in my data. We'll look at an example with that as well. All right, let's just jump straight into ACL. Let's go look at some data here. Right, so I want to start off with this column called, this table called employees. Let's look at this phone number column that a lot of you have seen before. As you'll notice, this first phone number has no formatting. It's just a bunch of digits. This phone number towards the bottom has brackets and a space and a hyphen. So it's got some formatting. The phone number above has a space and a hyphen, but no brackets. This is now going to cause problems for us. If we need to summarize on phone number to say, calculate the cost for each of phone calls for each phone number, for argument's sake, if that's what this data represented, we wouldn't be able to get the right answer if the phone numbers weren't consistently formatted. You know, some people think, okay, well, I've got something like fuzzy duplicates in ACL that will find the phone numbers, the duplicate phone numbers, even if the formatting is not the same. Now, that's true to a point. That is only useful, though, if you're going to look for duplicates. Most of the time, your analysis isn't looking for duplicates. That's not what we do every day, all day. We do a lot more in auditing and finance and so forth than just look for simple duplicates. So we have to fix this anyway. And even if the intention was to look for fuzzy duplicates, remember with fuzzy duplicates, you have this concept of Levenstein distance. How many changes must you make to one phone number so it looks like the other? If there are too many changes that you need to make because the formatting is so different from one phone number to the next, you are not going to pick up the duplicates even with fuzzy duplicates. So we always harmonize our data, even if we plan in any case to use the fuzzy duplicates command. All right, so I'm going to try something we did in the beginner's course. I'm going to try and make these phone numbers look the same. The easiest way is to remove all the formatting. I'm going to exclude the brackets, the space, and the hyphen from this column. So I'll go to my table layout to create a computed field. And of course, I'll just call it phone exclude quickly. And then I'm going to use the exclude function. Right, so I'm going to use the exclude function. And I'm going to, instead of string, double click on phone number. And I want to exclude these characters that I saw. I want to exclude the brackets, the space, and the hyphen. Right, so I'll save this and I'll quickly put this in the view, because I want to be able to see if I succeeded in fixing the formatting. In fact, in removing all the formatting. So I can do analysis using this phone exclude column. Now everything looks fine for the most part. The brackets are gone, the spaces are gone, etc. Until I scroll down a bit and I notice there are dots here. These dots are there because I did not exclude them. Exclude is very useful, but you have to know exactly what to exclude. If you do not know exactly what to exclude, you are in dangerous territory. So when I'm not sure, especially if I was investigating something like possible fraud, I would rather use the include function and focus on what I want to include in my new table, in my new column. I want to include only the digits. So let me try this again, but using the include function. So I'm going to go here and call this field C underscore include. Sorry, phone include, let me rather call it that, phone include. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the include function. I'm going to include from the phone number field only the digits. So I need to type all the different digits. So once I save this, I should see a column, if I add this to my view, with only digits, no dots, no brackets, nothing unusual for what I'm trying to achieve here. So most of these results in phone include and phone exclude will be the same. Where the problem was a bit further down where I had the dot in the phone exclude column. I don't have that dot in phone include, even though I may not be aware of the fact that there was a dot originally in phone number, because I'm focusing on keeping the digits, that is gone. Now, please remember, don't just throw away the exclude function, think you never need to use it. If you need to exclude only one hyphen and keep a whole lot of letters, if you've got something with letters and hyphens, don't go and type include and 26 letters. That's a waste of your time, just to exclude the hyphen. Now, as I said to you, when I was looking at that one PowerPoint slide, I can use the map function to help me to see what funny things there might be in this column. So what I could do is I could first create a computed field. And let me call this computed field exclude valid, right? I want to exclude, or let me say exclude digits. I want to exclude the digits. Okay, guys, please make sure that you switch off all your microphones, right? And switch off your webcams. Okay. Let me just minimize this. All right, so if I click here, and I look for this exclude function again, I'm going to exclude from the phone field all the digits, all the valid symbols. Let me add this to the view. Okay, let me just get back to the ACL screen for you. See, I wonder if I closed ACL by accident. No, I didn't. It's just hiding there from me. Okay, you can't hide from me. No one can hide from me if I've got ACL. Not even ACL can hide from me. Okay, so here we go. Let me just add this column to the view. where I excluded the digits. And all I'll be left with are these funny symbols. Now, I would do a filter to see what funny symbols there might be. Sorry, not a filter. I would browse, if I didn't know scripting, through this list to see, okay, I noticed there are brackets and hyphens, and what else? There's dots. It's very difficult, of course, to spot if there's a space. Here, luckily, I can see spaces in front of the hyphens, and there in front of that hyphen, I can see one too. If you know scripting, you can be a lot more scientific and a lot more precise. You would create this computed field, and then you would get your script to go through every single record, picking up all the different symbols that appear in this column. So picking up that there's an open bracket, a closed bracket, and so on. Because that's all very well for me to say I'm going to scroll through this list, because there's only 42 records here. If there were 42 million, that would not be practical for me. So my preference would be, after creating this computed field, to write a script to go through this column to find all the strange symbols that I need to exclude, if that is a strategy I decide to follow in the long run. Now, it is, by the way, valuable to pick up sometimes with the script which symbols are invalid, because sometimes the invalid symbols are not obvious ones like brackets and hyphens that you and I can see. Sometimes there are weird symbols like the enter key. Somehow an accounting system sometimes presses the enter key in the middle of a phone number. Now, you and I as human beings don't see this, but the system physically sees something, as if the enter key was, somehow produced a physical symbol. And the only way you can see that is by using ACL to go pick up that there's something in the background it sees that we don't. That way you know I need to exclude the enter key. Right, so you need ultimately, guys, as I've said many times before, to learn scripting for various reasons, one of them being, in this case, to pick up any strange symbols that the human eye cannot possibly spot. So please, for your own sakes, go learn scripting if you haven't done so already. Okay, so that's the exclude function, excluding things, to make the formats the same, but then I must be careful, and also the exclude function to help me see which symbols are, possibly invalid that I need to remove from my phone number column. Okay, let me go talk to you now about the omit function quickly in this column, because it was a bit confusing what I said earlier with the example of Catherine. Let me rather use this first person's name, Christine Ihaus. If I omit from this person's name, okay, I'll just call the field name omit. If I use the omit function and I omit from the name field, so I'm just going to type quickly, I omit HR. I'm going to do something very similar quickly. I'm going to save this. I'm going to do the exact same exercise quickly before I go back to my view, but using the exclude function. I'm going to say name exclude. I'm going to exclude from the name field HR. So let's see what this looks like. I'll just drag this over here to the left, or actually let me just make my life easier. I'm going to add these columns here quickly. I will say name exclude and name omit. I want those to write. So if I look at name omit, you see the HR in Christine has disappeared, but the H of her surname is still there, because omit omits the exact combination HR. With exclude, the HR is gone from Christine, but so is the H of her surname, because exclude will exclude every instance of H and every instance of R. Omit is often useful for omitting things like people's titles, Mr., Dr., Mrs., Professor, lieutenant, captain, etc. And also, omitting abbreviations for certain types of companies, like omitting LLC, Pty Ltd, Limited, etc., omitting those things. Because ABC Limited does not look the same as ABC Ltd, does not look the same as ABC to a computer program. Right, so omit is normally for combinations of things, where exclude would basically just mess up the name of something completely. I will use omit maybe if we have a bit of time in another example. All right, now there's another function I mentioned to you, lowercase. Lowercase is very simple, but very, very important. These names here, for example, they're all capitalized. That I can see because this is a small data set, but you never ever want to assume that everything is capitalized. Because again, Christine with a capital C is not the same as Christine with a small c. Christine with a small c and a capital H is different from Christine with a capital H and a small c. These variations happen in practice because people have different preferences when capturing data, because people have a slip of the fingers sometimes and capitalize the wrong letter. And of course, some people know how systems work. They know that systems are case sensitive, so they deliberately mess around with the punctuation to hide the activities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this name field lowercase quickly, just so we can remember how this function works. Okay, so this is my name lower field. I'm just going to type lower, that's a function name, and then name. Please do not use the proper function, those of you who remember the proper function, to harmonize your data when you're analyzing. You're introducing too many variables with capitals, at the start of each word. Always stick rather to lower when you are harmonizing your data for purposes of analysis. We use proper only when we want to make the data look pretty for reporting purposes. Okay, so if I just quickly add this here, name lower. All right, you can see it's all lowercase. Now, of course, there is another problem potentially in this name lower field. I'm not going to fix it here, but there are spaces here between the first name and the middle initial and the surname, which is normal. The problem is sometimes data captures put 2 spaces between the first name and the middle initial. Sometimes they put none. So you've got these issues with spaces. We need to exclude in practice those spaces as well. Be very sensitive to spaces in your data. Too many spaces, too few spaces, you name it, they cause problems. Usually it's a case of too many spaces. Right, now let's just move on to maybe the address column. Let's look at the address column. I think to save myself a bit of time with scrolling, I'm going to remove those columns. Actually, I want to go to the cities table. Sorry, no, I don't want to. Let me go here, the address column. Okay, it's a good thing I don't work for Google Maps. Huh? All right, so let's see, here's the address column. And I have these different street addresses. Now you'll notice, for example, we have this W dot. That is an abbreviation for West. We have potentially, somewhere else in this data, the actual word West. So this is going to cause problems again if we're trying to look for addresses that are the same, or we're trying to summarize on addresses and so forth, because some people will use W dot as the abbreviation for West. Some people will write the word West in full. So you need to decide what you're going to do. I might decide to do the following. I might decide to use the replace function. Okay, now I'm going to play with the address column quite a bit and make mistakes as I go along. Right? This, harmonizing data, it's not an exact science. You have to be careful. You'll get most of it right. You'll never get all of it right. You'll get most of it right. You've just got to be very careful about what you do and which order you do it. And the only way to find out is to experience and by looking at your data and a bit of trial and error. So I'm going to take the address. I'm going to just put the word West to show you I'm replacing West. So I'm going to use my replace function. I'm going to replace the word, the letters W dot rather. Replace function. In the address field, I want to replace W dot with West. Now, let's see what the impact of this is, and then I'll tell you what is wrong with what I've done. I've done something very, very dangerous. Let me leave that ticked. Okay. Oopsie, go back to ACL. Let's scroll here. Let me just resize this column. Okay, it hasn't added it for me. Let me just add it. Here we go. So I had a W dot here somewhere. Let me just see where it was. Okay, let me just find W. Let me find W dot. Okay, so there you can see in record 2 and 18, I had W dot. Here now, I have West instead of that. Now, there are problems, there are issues with what I've done. Firstly, I did not harmonize my capitalization. I replaced capital W dot. Who says it was capital W dot? I got lucky in these 2 records. I got very lucky. I should have immediately made everything lowercase. For goodness sake, always remember, step 1 is to make everything lowercase. That I'm telling you from experience. Make it lowercase. And then you would replace small w dot with small w again. So I've succeeded almost by accident because I just got very lucky with the way this data was captured. Now, there is another potential issue here. Some people might think, well, why don't we replace the word West with W dot? And the problem with that is you might have the word West in address. Someone lives in Western Avenue. So you've got to be very careful what you replace. As a general rule, I tend to tell people replace the longer words with something shorter. So I would generally, if I followed that rule, replace the word West with W dot. But in this case, it's not a good idea because you might have an address, as I said, with the word Western in. You've got to think about that possibility. So W dot, the abbreviation might be better to remove, to replace. Now I have some other questions. The question, for example, is, but now what about the dots? Because, in W dot, it doesn't seem to cause a problem. But what about something like street and S dot and whatnot? Let me just see, where's an ST dot for you? Let's see, I think there's an ST dot here somewhere. There we go. There someone has abbreviated street as ST dot. Now I'm thinking replace st dot with street. That would make sense, so that if that address is repeated somewhere with the word street, it's fine. But you've just got, we've also got to be careful. There's going to be dots in here that don't belong. So someone might have deliberately put 8.3 instead of 83 Sherman. So my logic tells me to exclude the dots, for example. So I've got a bit of a dilemma here. If I exclude the dots at this point, before replacing W dot with West, what am I going to replace? I need to exclude dots if there are inappropriate dots. As I said, in 8.3, there is such a thing. I need to exclude those dots. But I've got to be careful with the order. So I've got to think, what is more likely to cause a bigger mess in my data? If I exclude the dot first, then replace W dot, or if I replace W dot and then exclude the dot. The problem is if I exclude the dot first, there's no W dot, there's just W. I don't want to replace all the W's with the word West. So I'm telling you basically in another way, what I said to you earlier. This is not an exact science. You've got to think carefully, you've got to think critically, you've got to look at your data, you've got to think about different things you've seen in your data over the years, and then based on that, decide the correct order in which to do things. Luckily, for the most part, the order is usually the same, So we always start with lower. That's not negotiable. After that, we generally use the include function to include only the letters, so that all digits and dots and spaces and whatnot are gone. But that second step, include, is only a general guide. Okay, but we tend to normally use lower first, then include, and then we use conditions often with replace and so forth. But that's the general rule. You need to look at your data to decide what would work for you. Lower first, after that, be very careful. Okay, so let's talk about some of these other things. So we've got things like st dot. I need to replace that maybe with street, or I need to omit the word, I need to omit ave dot before avenue. Again, if I could say omit ave, that will remove ave, but it would leave the dot. And then I could exclude the dot afterwards, but we've seen already based on this dot, it might be better not to exclude the dots too soon. Rather first do the replaces of st dot and ave dot and so forth. Okay. But I would omit afterwards maybe ave dot. Now there's another danger, by the way. Suppose we have someone here. This person stays in Sherwood Avenue. Let's suppose that exact address is somewhere else in this data. But instead of saying avenue, it says Sherwood Street. And it could be the same street. Someone just didn't bother to write avenue. They just assumed this person lived in a street. So they are not going to be the same to ACL because someone incorrectly captured street instead of avenue in one of these records. You would need to omit the word avenue and the word street. So after making this lowercase, I would replace avenue in small letters, ave dot in small letters, with avenue in small letters. And I would do a similar thing for st dot and street. So I have everywhere words like avenue and street all written out in full in small letters. And then I would omit them using the omit function, so that Sherwood Avenue, 9440 Sherwood Avenue just becomes 9440 Sherwood, Oak Creek, etc. And the 9440 Sherwood Street becomes 9440 Sherwood without the street. That way you get rid of that. People often don't get the addresses right when they capture them. They often put avenue instead of street, or road instead of avenue, etc., etc., etc. So you need to make sure that they all say avenue or street or whatever correctly, and then omit those things. Okay. Now, there are some other issues here that we need to look at. There's so many things, especially with addresses. Firstly, you can see this address column. Everything is in one big column. The number of the street name, or the avenue, we don't know if it's been captured correctly, the city, the state, the postal code. We are lucky enough to already have a city column with the cities there as well. It is a very good idea when you're importing data, wherever possible, to import things in smaller pieces, in smaller chunks. So the person who imported this should have ideally imported the address so that we had the number and the street or avenue, whatever it is, in one column, the city in another column, which it is, the state in another one, and then the postal code in another column. Because it is very, very difficult to harmonize addresses. Yes, the other thing is easy. The include and the replace are easy. But addresses can get a lot trickier than that. Rather, put things into separate columns for your own sake wherever you can. Otherwise, you're going to probably at some point have to first split this up using split and clean and substring and all sorts of clever tricks to be able to harmonize your data properly. This column is going to cause lots of problems for us potentially when we harmonize it. So please be careful. Now we've got this, we've got to deal with it and see what's going on. All right, so let's talk about also numbers in street addresses. So I have got a street here somewhere, I think called Lakeside or something like that. Let me just check Lake Street. Right, so you can see there, I have got 22 Lake Street there in record 9, and I've got the same address, the identical address here in record 25. It's just that the number 22 has moved. In some countries, the number where someone lives is not put at the beginning of the address. And if you have clients from all over the world or clients in your own country that write the address in a different format, you've now got a problem because ACL doesn't know they're the same. Now, if so this is now a challenge. How do we how do we fix those two? So we decided that we want to move the 22 to the front. So we can try different things. Okay, so now some fun starts. So we might want to say, okay, I'm going to first keep only the digits. Let's try this. Okay? So I'm going to create a computed field. I'm going to call this address digits. I want to keep only the digits. Now this is in the office. This is where you just start trying something. And it might lead somewhere, it might lead nowhere, but you've got to explore the different paths. Don't just start jumping and randomly click a function. Think about it. Your thinking might not be perfectly formed yet. It's okay. Try your idea. See what happens. So I'm going to go to the address field. I'm going to include only the digits. Now remember, 0 is a digit 2 in an address, right? So I'm going to include all the digits. Let's see what this looks like. Let's see if this is helpful or not. My logic is telling me if I have only the digits like 22, then maybe I can just move it to the front. Let's see how good my logic is. So this is address digits. There we go. So now I've got this. I've got all these digits. I don't have just 22 for that one. I've got 22 plus it's stuck next to the postal code because I included only the digits, so the spaces are gone. Now, there might be a better way to do it, and I might go back to the table to try something else, or I might say to myself, well, you know what? I can basically, if I can remove the postal code from the end, then I'm left with a street number. Now, postal code in this data always consists of 5 digits. So if I remove the last 5 digits, what should be left is just the number 22, 579, and so on. So let me go try that now. So I'm going to go create a computed field. Let me call this address last. Let me call it number. I want to just get the number of the street. So I'm going to try and take the last. Use the last function. I want to take the last few digits from this field called, what was it, address digits. And I want to take the last 5. That's a postal code. Now I need to be careful here. I'm thinking that this will take the last 5 digits, and it might work out that way, but there's another possibility. Remember, there are spaces often in your data. There could be spaces after those digits, which means the last 5 digits are actually not digits, they're spaces. So to be safe, I'll say, let me all trim the address first, or sorry, not the address, the digits first, to make sure there's only digits. Now take the last 5. Now let me save this to see what this looks like. This is not the result I want yet, but I want to verify that what I see in my head is what ACL will show me. So let me just see here. So I want to, I've got here address digits, I've got, let's just see here. I forgot what I called it. This is why I'm not allowed to adopt children. Okay, let's just see address digits, address number. Okay. All right, so I've got the postal code, which is not really what I wanted, but it kind of is because I want to remove that. So I think to make my life easier so I don't confuse myself, I'm going to quickly change the name of this field to postal code, because that's what it is. And then I'll create another computed field, and I'll call this street number, why not? I will now use the omit function, and I will say I want to omit from, now let's just see here, I need to be careful. I think it was called the address digits field. This is why the view is so important, so I can see what I did, if I've chosen the right fields in that. I want to omit, now I want to omit whatever the postal code was. Now just in case, I'm going to all trim that. I want to omit the postal code, and let's see what this looks like. Okay, I'm going to get that error message, obviously, because I renamed that other field. Let's just see, what am I looking for here? Let me just remove this to get rid of some of this stuff for the moment. All right, let me just see. So the postal code is that, but that's not what I'm looking for. Just want to see if I can find phone include street number. Let me just see what the street number looks like. Okay, and that street number is 367 9164. Remember the problem I had earlier was with Lake, and there's 22, and the street number is 22. Now what I need to do is, because I'm trying to make that one in record 25 look like that one in record 19, I need to say to myself, take that street number and insert it in front, put it in front. Of course, there is a problem. The one problem is that there's already a number there. So I'm going to try and do the following. I'm going to say, all right, how can I tell ACL to put the number in front if there isn't a number in front already? So I'm going to say, let's just say address fixed. This is not fixed yet. This is far from fixed, okay? I'm going to say address fixed, and then I could say, all right, I want to go and let's assume that most of the addresses are correct. So I'll just say, let's copy over the original address column, which is actually dangerous, by the way, because that has capitals and small letters and all sorts of things. I should be more systematic. Now you can already see as well, I've done lots of things, and it becomes very confusing because I've got all these different computed fields now. Which one does which thing first? Which field has the correct, the most recent address that I should be working on in it, and so forth and so forth. Again, if you use only the mouse to analyze your data, and in this case to harmonize your data, it eventually becomes confusing. And you have to keep making notes on a piece of paper and going back to other fields to see what's going on. If, however, you have a script, it is so nice, it is much easier because you have written down, step 1, this is the computer field I'm creating. Step 2, the last computer field in your script, in your document to ACL, has the most recent field that you should be using. Scripts have just so many advantages that the mouse will never give us. So for those of you who know scripting, good for you. For those of us who know scripting like me, who can't use scripting right now, please send me a sympathy card because this is just horrible using the mouse all the time. But the rest of you who haven't done scripting for your own sake, please, you need to learn scripting for your own sake. It's really going to help you a lot. Anyway, so I'm going to take the address and copy it over by default. But I'm going to say, well, that doesn't make sense. Sometimes I shouldn't copy it over. Now, I'm trying to think, how do I have a condition that says this starts with a letter? Now I'm thinking about a function called regexfind, which I'm not going to show you right now, but that would help me to find something that starts with a digit. I'm trying to think how else. Well, I could use the match function maybe to say, show me where it starts with a 0 or a 1 or a 2, or I could make my life easier and say, why not use the between function? If I look in the address column and it starts with anything between anything in the range 0 to 9, then I need to insert a number in front. Now, where is that number? Well, let's just see here. It is the street number plus and whatever is in the address column. Now, let's see how this works out because I'm nervous with all the spaces that are there or might not be there. Spaces are a big deal in data analytics, a huge deal. This is also why a lot of you will remember when you attended the beginner's course with me when we were importing some files, I would carry on and on and on. Why are you highlighting spaces here? Why are you putting in spaces there? Because they cause so much grief for us. So let's see what this is called. This is called C address fixed. Okay. All right, and there you see, there are lots of spaces there because in my field with just the numbers, the street numbers, you have got these big spaces. Now, of course, this is not what I want yet. It looks like I'm repeating the number 22. So something is wrong with my logic, right? So let me go back to my address fixed. So this view is important. ACL doesn't need to see anything in the view. The second you create a field in the table, it's happy. But we need to see it as human beings in the view to see what, if there's a mistake like I've got here. I think I should change this condition to say, if it does not start with anything from 0 to 9, then do this. And I need to all trim this here. And I need to add a space afterwards, I think, in case there isn't one. And then add the address. Let's see if this looks a bit better. Okay. Right, let's see if address fixed looks a bit better. Okay, that one's fine. None of those are funny. Let's just look for Lake again, because that's one of those that worried me. There you can see 22 Lake Street, 22 Lake Street. But there's a problem. This 22 is still in the middle. So the question is, do I now go and omit 22? And of course, the answer is no, because if I do, I'm going to omit it in the front as well. So maybe I should have checked if there isn't a number in the front, omit it to get this column without any numbers, then go back to this and create the field we had with just the street numbers, and then add it to not to this column, but the one that would have had no numbers at all. So you can see it becomes a back and forth of realizing, oopsie, we made another mistake, there's another issue. Harmonizing data is simple, the concept is simple. And it's not difficult, it's just well, it's not too time consuming, especially if you have a script. If you don't have a script, you take a lot more time because you keep losing, your train of thought, you keep forgetting where you are. For goodness sake, rather do this in a script if you can, okay? If you haven't done scripting, just do one thing with the mouse and then go to the log and get a script from there. It won't be a perfect script, but maybe you can try and figure out from what you get in that script from the log, how to add a few other things. Ideally, learn how to write a script from scratch, please. It's going to help you so much. So you can see this is a back and a forth thing. And eventually you will get there. You will never harmonize 100% of everything. It's highly unlikely. But this is the process you follow. Make things lowercase, which I didn't always do here. And I told you that's dangerous. Then if it makes sense, include only the letters. But of course, it might not always make sense. Sometimes you need to first replace W dot. Sometimes you first need to use the word omit. Sometimes you need to omit after replacing W dot. There is no surefire way of deciding always which order in which you should do these different functions. Look at your data. That is what's going to guide you. And again, if you don't know scripting, you're going to have to probably go back 10 steps often when you discover some other issue that you hadn't spotted before. With scripting, you don't have to go back 10 steps. It is so easy to fix a script for this kind of thing. It is unbelievable. Right, anyway, so these are some of the things I have to look at with the addresses, like the numbers, for example. Now, I want to show you something else quickly before I forget. And then if there's some time, I can maybe show you one other thing. Right, let's look at this table I've got called cities. These are a list of cities that, in theory, I have in my data. Now, all these city names you'll notice are in lowercase. And they're all actually one word. Some of them were like New Hyde Park, for example. The actual name of the city, New Hyde Park, is 3 different words. But I deliberately put this in lowercase without spaces. So I've basically done an include of first the lower function and then include only the small letters. And this is on purpose. I want to see if these cities here in my city column, let me just remove this quickly, are consistently formatted. Okay, I want to see if these cities are consistently formatted. Because, it's possible, if you have a city like Johannesburg, some people write Johannesburg, some write Joburg, some write JHB. For New York, some people write NY, some write New York, some write New York City, some write NYC. To ACL, these are different cities, not the same city. So similarly, I might have a problem here where I've got different city names. Now, if I anticipated that people sometimes write NY, sometimes NYC, sometimes New York, I can go create a conditional computed field or just a normal computed field saying replace NY with New York, replace NYC with New York, and so forth. But I cannot think of every possible variation of New York or whatever the city is. So this is where my other table of cities comes in, becomes useful. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a computed field. I'll call this city lower, and I'll include only letters as well. I'll call it city lower include, why not? So I'm going to first make the city column lowercase, make it small letters. Then I'm going to say include from this lowercase version all the letters, all the small letters, because I don't know if there are spaces or hyphens or what funny things there are in these city names. So you can type it in alphabetical order, you can run across every key in the keyboard, on the keyboard, it doesn't matter. As long as, you put all the letters of the alphabet in lowercase. I don't need capital letters because I've made everything lowercase. So let's see, what will this look like if I put this in my view? See, let's go back to ACL. Let me just add it here so we can see more easily. City address, sorry, city include, city lower include. There we go. So you can see it's all one word, it's all small letters, no spaces, nothing else. What I now do is I use the join command. And I say, I want to join my employees table to the cities table. That cities table is like a master file of how cities should be written if I write them in lowercase only and with no spaces or hyphens or anything in between. So now I'm going to say, right, where is my city low include column? I want to join, that's my key field. In theory, it should look like that one. I'll just pull through all the fields from my employees table. I'm going to do an unmatched primary join. So which of these city names do not appear in my master file of cities? Okay, so I'll just call this unmatched cities. and I'll click OK. And let's see what's going on here. I didn't actually need to pull through all these fields. I should have just pulled through the city, but you can see there's a city originally called Esbridge. And this city here, Esbridge, is in employees table, but it is not in the master file. So let me just think, what is this Esbridge? Let me go look, what could Esbridge be? Okay, so here's an Esbridge here. I wonder if there's something else, and then maybe something rings a bell. Let me just look for the word bridge. Let me think, is there something like that? Oh, Stockbridge, that's what it is. So someone went and used the abbreviation Esbridge instead of Stockbridge. So I could now use the replace function to go replace Esbridge with Stockbridge, for example. Okay, so let me just quickly do that. So I'm going to say C city fixed. This is not fixed yet, definitely not. There's just too many issues here. I'm going to say, by default for the moment, I'll assume the city column is correct, the lower one. And then I want to say, if I find, or if the city, the lower one, equals Esbridge, I want to replace it with, sorry, I'm trying to think what it was called now. I'll just put, I think I'll just put Esbridge for the moment again. We're just going to see what this was called. Okay, Stockbridge. It was called Stockbridge. Clearly, I've never been there. Right, so I'm going to replace this with Stockbridge. I should actually replace it with small s as well. I don't want to mess up the capitalization. I want to keep it small letters until I've got my final results. Then I can make it look pretty for reporting purposes. While I'm still doing my audit procedures, I wouldn't change it. So I would have now a column here somewhere where I've got city fixed. It's definitely not fixed yet. But you can see it now says Stockbridge. There are lots of issues to think about, especially with addresses. Again, please, for your own sake, do it in a script if you can. If you don't know scripting, learn it for your own sake. But there's so many things we need to look for when we harmonize data. Now, it does seem intimidating, especially seeing as you've witnessed me going back and forth and making mistakes and forgetting where I was. But it's not actually that bad, especially if you know scripting. I'm going to say that over and over because it's the truth. Okay, if you want to suffer, then you don't learn scripting. If you want to make your life a lot easier, then you learn scripting. But it will take you a lot less time than you might think it does. So a true story, one of the clients I went to years ago, I needed to look at, let's say, the supply name column, and I needed to omit and substring and insert and do whatever else I needed to, things that are similar to what I'm doing here. And it took me about half an hour to fix all of that, and I was still talking to them. So it actually takes less time than what you think. In some places here, I deliberately made mistakes, as I told you I would at the beginning, because I wanted you to see some of the issues. But it isn't as horrific as it might seem at the moment. But for your own sake, you do need to harmonize. You will miss most exceptions. I promise you, you'll miss most exceptions if you do not harmonize your data first. It's not just a case of, oh, well, these functions are there, they're nice to know, or they'll keep me busy in the office, doing something, I'll harmonize for fun. If you do not harmonize your data, most of your exceptions will not show up in your reports. This is a fact of life. Anyway, so that is using the join command to basically show you if you maybe missed out some abbreviations or variations of a city. Now, if this city column didn't exist, I would have a problem. I've got to pull it out here. But trust me, if you try and pull out a city from a street, from a full address, it's very tricky because a city might consist of one word, a city name 2 words, 3 words. A street might consist of 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, 5 words. It's very difficult to predict. In fact, it's impossible to predict how many words there are in a street and a city and so forth. So it's better, again, when you import an address, if you can, import it separately. This person only imported the city field separately, not the other things. And that's going to cause a lot of problems for us when we try to fix these addresses and look for the postal codes and so forth. Now, another thing that might happen is you have these postal codes at the end. That postal code, if this address appears somewhere else in this data, should be identical. The problem is because of data capturing errors or because of people doing funny things, you might have the same address elsewhere in this table, in this column, but with a different postal code. So you've actually got to remove those postal codes from here, put them into separate fields. Again, it would be best to do that in the input process. Now we would have to try and figure out, should I use split or clean, or what do I do to get it out? Turns out it's not too bad in this case, but often it's very, very tricky. And then you could go use join to join us to a table of postal codes that you got from the post office or from some other organization to see which of these postal codes don't show up. But the problem, of course, is if I put a postal code there, the wrong one, when I'm capturing this data, but it's valid in the sense of there is a city with that postal code, join's not going to help me. It's maybe better to use the relate command to look up the name of the city for that code and then compare it with a filter to that city to see if they're different. If they're different, you know there's a problem. Your data is not harmonized, but of course it could, and you want to harmonize it. On the other hand, you might want to say someone's making up supplier addresses and that fake supplier addresses, fake customer addresses, whatever the case is, because they're trying to hide something from us. Okay, but you would probably need to use relate there. Okay, let me just show you one quick thing here. Let me show you this regex find only a little bit, only a tiny, tiny bit. Okay, using, let me just remove this again from the view. Okay, it's very cluttered, my word. Okay, so we have got this phone number column. Let me just add the one in that we harmonized slightly. Phone include. Right, so this one here has no brackets, no dots, etc. Now, sometimes we want to insert formatting in there, yes, to make it pretty, but sometimes we deliberately want to insert formatting because it will help us to do our joins and our relates and our summarizes and cross tabulates and whatever else. So let's suppose I want to make the phone numbers, all of them here, look like this one in record 10. Now, in the beginner's course, you know we use the insert function, but I'm going to do it today with a different function called regex replace. Now, this function is very special. It's very different, okay? It uses, as I said, what's called regular expressions. Regular expressions were created by IT people a long time ago before ACL was ever created. So they have, it's a language, a regular expression is just the name of a language, just like English is the name of a language, but with its own rules, its own syntax, its own symbols. So we're going to replace in this field with, let's just see if I include, we're going to replace in there certain things. Now, this is a bit strange. You might have noticed there, by the way, the keyword there is pattern. With the normal replace function, says alt text. This is more flexible in a manner of speaking than the normal replace function. So I'm going to do something strange. I'm going to put brackets, even though there are no brackets in that phone include column. The brackets in the case of this language called regular expressions don't, as a general rule, mean brackets. They mean a combination. And I'm going to write /d, and I'm going to put curly brackets and 3. Now, this is very, very new to most of you. Okay, forwards, that /d means digit, that 3 in curly brackets means 3. So I'm saying I'm looking for, in my phone numbers, where there are 3 digits next to one another. And I want to replace them with something. And I'm going to replace them with brackets. Now, this is a bit odd because the brackets in this case mean the normal brackets. I don't expect you to understand this. It takes a lot of getting used to this function. Right? I'm going to put $sign. That $sign is back to the regular expression language. And I'm going to put $1. So I've got here a combination. I've said, let's call this combination 1. That $sign means combination 1, $1. So I want you to put $1, combination 1 ACL inside brackets. Let's see what this looks like, this mysterious thing that I've got going here. This function is very, very strange because it uses something that's very foreign to ACL, something that most of us are not used to, right? So let me just quickly add it here. And this is, just here, sorry, where is this phone formatted? Okay, so you can see I've basically said, look at the original phone number column. Is there a combination of 3 digits next to one another? Yes, there's 508, put it in between brackets. So there's 508 in brackets. Is there a combination of 3 digits? Yes, there is. There's another one, put it inside in between brackets. Now that's not what I meant to do, but that's effectively what I accidentally did. Now, the good news at least is I've managed to get the dialing code inside 3 brackets. Let me go back to my table layout and try to fix this. So my formatted field, oops, I need to say, okay, ACL, you are going to see another combination. Again, 3 digits. But I don't want you just to put brackets around it. What I want to do is I want you, ACL, to put brackets around the first combination of 3 digits, then put a space, ACL, and then I want you to type whatever the second combination was, combination 2. And let's see what this looks like. So there, I don't have any more brackets, you know, onto the right of my dialing code. I've got a space after that, and then I've got those 3 digits. But I actually would like to have a hyphen after that combination. So let me go back here and modify this. I want to put a hyphen, and then I want to put the third combination. But of course, I need to say to ACL there's a third combination. Okay, ACL, after those 3 digits, you are going to see a combination of 4 digits. And that combination, combination 3, must be typed after the hyphen. Okay. Oopsie, I've put the hyphen in the wrong place, I think. Okay, let me just go back there. It's a good thing I have the view to tell me I've done something wrong. Let's just see here, formatted digits. So I've put too many things here. Well, let me just put, let's just see. I have got, how many brackets there, right? So I'm just trying to see what I've got here. I want to say there are 4 digits. I might have to zoom in here so I can see what I've actually typed. This is combination 3. I'm sure that's right. So let me just copy and paste this into Notepad or something so I can see a bit better what I've typed, because this is ridiculously small. Okay, so I've got 4 digits. Let me try. Okay, I'm not going to stress too much because we're running out of time now. If I don't get this right, I'll try and remember. There we go. Okay, it was just because I couldn't see properly. This is what happens when you spend all night with vampires. You start seeing like a bat. Okay, so there we go. So there I fixed it. Now, please don't stress if you go, now, how did that work? I don't understand this function. It is not a function we do use a lot in practice. It is not a function we teach in the beginner's course. It is a function we use very rarely in practice. I might use it for this exercise in practice, but then again, I might just use the normal replace function. There's only one instance really when I use this function, and it's to help me with PDF imports. Regular expressions, let me just warn you, are very complicated. This is the truth. They are very complicated. I don't care what anyone says, they are complicated. And if they weren't complicated, you wouldn't have people having IT conferences every single year telling you that they are not complicated. They are complicated. They were a very first attempt, or one of the first attempts at explaining to a computer how to look for certain things. And as such, they were very low level. They were quite complicated. We can do the things that regex replace does with the normal replace function, usually with the same amount of steps, but occasionally in more steps, unfortunately. But if you want to know more about regular expressions, just go onto the internet, go onto YouTube, and you'll see people teaching about all these different symbols, because regular expressions are not an ACL thing. They are very confusing, and you have to practice them over and over and over. But as I said, because we don't use them that often, it might not actually be worth your while even to go look at the videos and that online to see how they work. If you want to go for it, it doesn't hurt to know. But generally speaking, we're not going to use this function. But the point is, we could use it if we wanted to, in certain circumstances, to harmonize the data. So I just want to remind you again, okay, before you start analyzing your data, for goodness sake, harmonize it. Step 1, of course, is when you're importing the data, import it as sensibly as possible with separate fields for everything. Otherwise, harmonizing your data becomes more difficult. It isn't generally difficult, but it becomes very tricky if everything's in one big field like addresses. Use the functions we taught you in the beginner's course. Use some of the functions you saw now again. Some of them were what you learned in the beginner's course. Use things like the join command to help you. Use other things that you have not learned in the session, or that we didn't speak about in the session. Use what works. I've only listed what we use most commonly. Preferably, for goodness sake, use a script so you can see your own logic. It's very difficult to follow your own logic if you've got 300 steps because you've created 300 computer fields with the mouse. It's easier if it's written down in a document, because then you can see what the last thing was that you did. And also in a script, we write comments to ourselves in English. I'm doing this for the following reasons. This is what I'm doing here. This is why I've decided to do, change my mind about something else or some other way I'm fixing this. Scripting helps you so much in this kind of exercise. And the good news of scripting too is you can use that script then next month to fix your new data set. If you don't know scripting, you're going to have to go through this whole process of figuring this all over again from scratch next month. You need to know scripting for your own sake. I cannot emphasize it enough. Also, we saw, and this is very important, this is not an exact science. Harmonizing data, yes, there are guidelines. Start with the lower function. Generally speaking, then go to include and include only the letters, but the second step is not a hard and fast rule. The first step definitely is lower first. You need to anticipate what's in your data. You need to use the map function. You need to use the join command, etc., to see what's in your data. Use exclude, use filters, use scripts, whatever, to see what's going on, to help you see the different possibilities you hadn't thought of. And then try systematically, carefully to try and fix one problem. But be careful, when you fix one problem, you might actually cause another problem. And then you might realize you need to fix problem B before problem A instead of problem A before problem B. Again, if you know scripting, it's going to help you to quickly change the order. Without scripting, changing the order becomes a bit of a mission. So please don't be intimidated by harmonizing data. Don't be, okay? It takes a bit of practice in the beginning, but it's not a huge amount of time. It's not a huge investment of your time. And you'll actually get to appreciate it and like it more and more. Now, this isn't too bad. It's interesting. Sometimes it's a bit of a challenge. But okay, at the end of the day, even though the data set I have now is very different from the one I had yesterday, to some extent, it's the same old scenario. I've just got to change the order in which I do these functions or this harmonizing. Okay, so guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. If you haven't done scripting for your own sake, please, I beg you, do scripting. It is absolutely essential, not just for harmonizing, but for so many things. Right, and that's it for today. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. And that's it. Have a good day.